Hello.
Right.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
And erase the genetic imprints that we have so that we are free of these epigenetic wounds and traumas and all those kinds
about negative entity attachments and their misdiagnosis, or at least I believe their misdiagnosis, as schizophrenia or bipolar or any of the other mental illnesses with psychosis.
And the leap of understanding that you're basically nourished by something bigger than the material, physical food.
Sailing around. But each and every region had its own attributes and why the people either thrived or why the people were in deprivation, if you will. Lived in different areas of your region, even maybe even within your own town. You're going to find that the energetics of the space are quite interesting.
There is something that is interacting with that crop when it's laid down. If it's improving it, if it's a higher resistance to drought and sunlight and so forth and so on, well, that brings up, like corporations like Monsanto. What do we need Monsanto for? We don't need genetically modified seeds and foods to allegedly give us higher yields. We can do it most likely with sound, energy, and that's what we found in those tests, that it absolutely changed it from the inside. And that's something that the field artists or the debunkers don't really like.
Standard academics state that certain structures were made at very specific times, but they can't back up that with actual evidence. For example, in Bolivia, they say that Tiwanaku and Pumapunku were created by the Tiwanaku culture, who were barely a Bronze Age people, and yet we see evidence of almost laser flat surfaces that could not have been done by that culture.
Because I'm using a fork coming in on the field, and as I'm bringing it in, it comes to this point. It's like you're stopped. You can't move any further.
Wow.
It may be stuck energy, but it may not be as stuck as some of these other points in our life, right?
Right. That's amazing.
I will talk about these technologies, connections with consciousness, connection with the particles, how you can implement all this advanced technology in a hyperspace hologram, which all that I was taught from extraterrestrial races,
right.
Understandable.
Because of course the top or the 500 blue chip companies around the world, all of them have Feng Shui implemented at their head office.
Really?
Yeah, every single one. Even Donald Trump says, I don't understand Feng Shui, I just know it makes me a lot of money.
Or even an operation, finding that 0 point, that calmness, that stillness, being able to biohack that into your system and be open and receptive makes all the difference in the world. So really, enhancing your ability, your receivership of anything in life is what we're after.
How do we actually express the invisible, the intangible into the actual tangible and manifested? And that's what I've really been supporting people over the last 9 years, to really create projects, create something real.
We work with how can we create super products that are using all of these types of technologies to create the most powerful energetic information to transform the field. And that's kind of how these products all started to create themselves, to allow people to heal themselves. And
we have one instantaneous conduit, not all these split pieces and parts, and then clearing out the Akashic record realms, clearing out the soul level attributes that have also been still affecting magnetically your experiences in a body on a planet, to where you're able to supersede over, really accelerating and quantum leaping, as quickly as you can handle for your highest best good.
And how we blend our intuition with that scientific or mathematical information. There's a lot of patterns, there's a lot of sacred geometry underlying astrology, which I get very excited about. So I'm also going to be looking a lot at correlations and explaining how those work.
Convey the message that humankind is at this very critical threshold where we require a shift in consciousness, that no amount of reduction in our carbon emissions or whatever we might put in place to try and mitigate against climate change and pollution and all the other terrible things that are happening to our beloved Earth are going to happen successfully unless we shift human consciousness from ego to a higher level of consciousness. a more connected level of consciousness, connected both with each other and with the
As
divine.
grandparents, and that where there is a link between how we are thinking and how we are working, between epigenetics, that's a booming part of modern science since 15 years, and the miasmatic theory we are using in homeopathy.
Really streamline the process of creating what you desire and propelling you on the path of your greatest desires, your purpose, and your expression of self.
Particularly in roles of leadership, whatever that means to you. So whether you're the CEO of a corporation or whether you're the leader of your household, you're playing the role of leader in many different contexts. So how can you tap in and use this to create a better world?
And precognition really relates to how the heart operates. It perceives things before our mind does, so it's precognition. And I have a lot of tools that I have developed on how to, reconstitute our physiology so that we start operating from that place.
I think if you really speak from the heart and you kind of extend that into what you're doing or what you're creating, because every piece of creation you do is actually a piece of yourself coming out.
Doing is it's uniting these ancient principles of spirituality with scientific principles. So an example of that would be the law of karma, which people may have heard of, can actually be related to entanglement in scientific theory.
See, like, wow, yeah, I really am a soul on a journey to take in these catalysts of life and learn from them and polarize and evolve spiritually to ascend up the levels of density of consciousness that the law of
a higher connection with ourselves and the greater version that we already are. We don't need to necessarily be more. We just need to connect more and be stronger in who we already are and trust that some more.
The work that we are really called to do, where there is no evidence that you're going to succeed or the relationship is going to succeed, we really tend to rely most powerfully. The biggest decisions, I call it choices, when you make a decision, you're listening to your head. When you make a choice, you're truly listening to your intuition.
When we talk about nature and try to understand nature, often we end up with things that are hard to understand, like the sacred geometry and the golden number and the number phi, and these infinite numbers. They are called infinite numbers. So it's a very interesting example about how science meets spirituality.
Together in the lens, language, and logic of vibration in the form of a model that I call ionation. So it integrates conflict, consciousness, change, communication through the lens, language, and logic of vibrational intelligence. So
the way the world is structured didn't add up with through observations compared to what we're taught. And again, science being able to observe and then form hypotheses and then test and then get your findings. So being able to observe things that were very different from what was in the book. The main element though was the higher purpose.
By not doing things the way I thought was the right way, and learning that there is no right way, really. There's only the way that works right here and right now for me, or for you, or for each one. And then the sum total of that makes a whole cohesive structure that works in cooperation, basically. So when we cooperate with ourselves, we cooperate with each other, and then we cooperate with Earth, because we cannot not do that if we are in harmony.
Good. And somebody said, well, how do I do that when I'm looking out into a world that I don't agree with and I can't see anything good in it? We can focus on the good, even when the mainstream media is determined to show us, absolutely committed and determined to show us what's going wrong in this world. We can still accentuate the positive in all of it. We can focus on the good.
So we need to neutralize the body, we need to neutralize the mind, we need to neutralize the emotion, we need to neutralize the soul in a way,
in order to have the most pure connection and observation with reality. And I guess this is what children do, you know, that's what baby does. They come in reality, they have no judgment, it's just empty. They're just empty and they just receive. And through that information coming into them, they drive conclusions, and those conclusions become laws and rules. And before they even realize it, they already created the jail in which they're going to spend the rest of their existence trying to escape, not knowing that they created that jail in the first place. And it is important now to have those debates so we can put the base of what is fundamentally missing in our society, which is ethic and moral. Like, we have lost those two compass.
We take a look at the past 50 years of our human history, and looking at how things have developed into the state that we're in right now, there has been a tremendous amount of social engineering in which many systems are interdependent of one another. And so the more and more we understand how they're interdependent, we can understand why we reach where we're at, kind of like a hypnosis that's kind of occurred collectively, and dehypnotize ourselves into an activation of frequency and holographic DNA.
When we are going deeper into yourself, you are reaching spiritual dimensions. Spirituality is not something separate, going on a different track. It's actually the same development. It's a higher development. You know, spirituality, intuition, insight, these are all essential elements of our life. And essential elements that also, if we want to share what we have come across in our life, we have to turn to that. The great spiritual masters have been highly evolved human beings. And it doesn't matter if they're scientists or prophets or artists or poets rather, whatever they were doing, it doesn't matter. Spirituality comes through in whatever you're doing if you allow it to come.